This is Hacking Entrepreneurs with Angel Clark.
Welcome back to the Angel Clark Show. Hacking Entrepreneurs is about to start. We are sitting with Jeffrey Kafer, who is a professional freelancer audiobook narrator and voiceover talent living in Los Angeles. He has voiced over 250 audiobooks and performed in commercials for Buffalo Wild Wings, Chipotle, and countless other companies. Seeing a lack of advertising and promotional opportunities for audiobooks, Jeffrey created audiobookblast.com, an inexpensive way for authors, publishers, and narrators to distribute, review, and promotional copies of their audiobooks to interested listeners. Jeffrey, I want to thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I really appreciate it. And, you know, when I first started doing audiobooks, I didn't really know very much about the audiobook world, and my producer started looking into audiobooks, and everywhere that he looked, he happened to see your name. And I think you've probably done that on purpose, right?
Well, yeah, that darn Facebook, I'm all over it. It's fun to be a resource for people. It's fun to help people out where I can. And yeah, there's a bit of ego too. I like being known as one of the guys who knows how to do audiobooks. It's kind of cool.
What I'd like to do is we have a series of questions that are geared towards business and making money and some of the different ways that you've gotten to where you're at in your business. And I'd like to go through those with you if you're okay with that.
Sure.
Okay, so the first one that we have is, what was your first business idea and what did you do with it?
Well, actually, my first business idea, aside from being an audiobook narrator, was to create my own publishing company.
Oh.
It was called Springbrook Audio, and it is no more because acx.com kind of did away with it, which is fine. The common thing I would get was authors would email me and say, hey, I want you to do my audiobook. And I'd say, okay, cool, no problem. Figure all that out. And then they would say, so then what do I do with it? Because you can't just go to Audible and say, here's my book. You have to have a contract with them.
Yeah.
So I came up with Springbrook Audio to sort of give a value add for the narration project, because then I could say, oh, by the way, hire me because I can also get it on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon, which is something that the average person who has one audiobook can't do. You have to have, at that point, you had to have at least 10 audiobooks ready to go before Audible would even return your calls. So that was my first idea as a value add to my narration services. But ACX kind of did away with that, which is fine. They just do it. It's nice.
Now, how did you get your first idea for business? How did the first, hey, no one's doing this, I should do it. How did that pop into your head?
I first started being a freelancer when I got laid off from Microsoft. They tend to let you come back after that. So there's that. Luckily, I had started narrating a couple of years before. While I was at Microsoft, I got permission to moonlight as a voiceover guy. So I was able to I was able to transfer into making that a full-time career. Which still took a while. I mean, it took a while to stabilize that after getting laid off.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's not something that happens overnight.
No. As my friend Bob Sauer says, voiceover is a great way to make a living, but it's not a great way to make a living quickly.
No, it's really not. So what is it that made you choose voiceover?
That's a good question. I grew up in the theater, and so I did a whole bunch of plays up through working at Microsoft, and then I had a family and kids, and going to rehearsals and stuff just took up too much time. So I looked into VO as a way to have that creative acting outlet, and I didn't have to go to rehearsals every night. So it feeds the beast, as it were, and lets me make money too. So yay.
Yeah, well, when you have something that is artistic like that you're very passionate about, when you find that you have to step away, it's very difficult. It feels almost like you're missing something. You're missing a part of you. You know, a lot of people, I think, underestimate the amount of dramatic ability that is required to properly narrate a book. I mean, obviously there are some that don't really need too much, but a lot of books, when you have to do all these different character voices and dramatic readings, and this crazy event is happening and that's happening, like, it takes a lot. And, you know, I actually, do you think a lot of people in audiobooks, do you think a lot of them have an acting background?
The upper echelon of people do. Absolutely. If you look at the Scott Bricks and the Barbara Rosenblatts, the top people in the audiobook world who are always working and are lauded with awards, they're absolutely actors. There's no question about that. And they would say that audiobook narration specifically is all about the acting. There is no question about that.
So our next one is, if you could have given yourself a piece of knowledge or advice when you were just starting out, what would that be?
Oh, it's easy. This is a business. Don't get so caught up in the performance that you forget how to run your business. I am still learning tons of stuff every day about running a business. And I mean, it has to do with marketing and advertising and PR and customer service and taxes and licenses, depending on where you live. There is just so much to know. Now, you can outsource a lot of that. You know, I have an accountant, but still, you've got to know what you're doing, what you need to tell the accountant. You've got to know what licenses you need, and, you know, you've got to keep good, accurate records, because your accountant doesn't do that for you. He just takes what you record and processes it. So study business. Don't just study performance art, but study basic business and how to be self-employed. And there's a ton of books out there that you can read to familiarize yourself with that.
It seems to me like a lot of people would get very caught up in one aspect and not focus on the other. And it's probably very difficult to split the time between the two. And you mentioned something that I think was pretty important. You said, you know, I have an accountant. And I think it's very important to realize that there are some areas where someone else is going to be able to do it better than you, and to hire out for those areas, or to outsource for those areas, because it's not worth the time and frustration for you yourself to do it when someone else can do it better, faster, and handle it, all that frustration and all that headache, and it just goes away on your end.
Well, yeah, and if you look at something like taxes, you really don't want the IRS coming knocking on your door. Sometimes you got to let the experts handle stuff. Plus, there's the financial consideration. You know, you're going to pay an accountant a couple $100 to do your taxes, right?
Yeah.
So where is your time better spent? Is it spent you're going to spend 12 hours doing your taxes because you don't know what you're doing. You, the royal you, not you, angel, but, you know, the royal you, the average person is going to spend a whole day doing their taxes. And how much money could you have earned by working and earning money and letting an accountant handle that?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, it's not just the expertise, it's the monetary considerations.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a very, very good bit of advice there. Now, my next question on my list is, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
You know, I wanted to be an actor.
Really?
I wanted to be an actor. You know, I did. And I went to film school, and I went to film school in San Francisco, and I sort of got out of it because I said, I don't want to be an actor. I don't want to move to LA and be an actor. Guess what happened 20 years later?
Well, based on your bio, you moved to LA and you're an actor.
Yeah, well, you know, but that eventually happened. Things come full circle. But I actually spent 15 years in tech. I worked for Macromedia and Microsoft. I was a video game tester for 10 years, which everybody thinks is the greatest job in the world. I got news for you.
Not when you get stuck doing the same thing over and over and over again because there's a glitch and you can't move past it. Don't get me started on video game glitches. But, you know, it's very rare for someone to actually be doing what it is that they wanted to do when they were a kid.